Everybody Hates Rand is a Wheel of Time podcast that will contain spoilers for all 14 books. So if you're anti-spoiler, pause this, read all 14 books, and come back. We'll be here, waiting.
Our title is a joke and is meant to be taken as such. In the context of this podcast, everybody refers to us and our cat. You are free to feel however you want about Rand, who is a fictional character. Don't DM us.
The world is a mess, Dark One stretching out his hand. The dragon's reborn, the fire's been fanned, but everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand.
Yeah, okay, this is Everybody Hates Rand. It's a friendly neighborhood wheelie time podcast. I'm Emily Azusha.
I'm Sally Goodger.
We're almost done with Crown of Swords.
I know, how does this happen?
We might, do the next episode and then take a holiday hiatus.
Yeah, that sounds nice.
Come back in January.
Back in January.
January. The new year.
2022.
2022. That's a lot of twos.
Two.
What a stupid observation.
I mean, it is a lot of twos. You're not wrong. Oh, hi, buddy.
Hi, Pickle.
I did almost just say hi, Pickle, without even thinking about it.
We keep referring to my cat as Pickle because my deaf grandpa, he's not my hard of hearing grandpa, thought I said Pickle when I was telling him our cat was named Tybalt.
Yeah.
So we were like, that's a hilarious name for a cat, and now his name actually might change to Pickle on accident. Should we talk about that before we talk about
Matt? We can talk about the magic boxes.
Okay, yeah, magic boxes. They're not actual magic boxes. They are little, pieces of, I don't know if Samuel made them somehow, if he commissioned them. Went to some, he's in charge of Ilion. Did he go to some blacksmith or whatever and be like, I want you to make some sort of vaguely magic-looking cubes?
Yeah.
And they were like, okay, High Lord.
Sure.
Whatever the fuck your name is.
Oh, yeah, I don't even remember what they call him in Ilion. I'm sure we'll find out in the next chapter.
I know, it starts with a B. Okay.
High Lord bitch.
High Lord bastard. So we're skipping Matt's chapter, we'll come back to it, but this chapter that is titled Spears, because that's always the chapter title when Robert Jordan sort of amorphously wants to talk about the ale as a general concept, but we are catching up with the Shadow, and we get a few points of view. We are finally getting to sort of the point, I guess, which is that Samuel is about to disperse them throughout the continent. Although not to very great effect, he intentionally puts a lot of them right in the path of Rand's armies, apparently as, a distraction.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know, silly, in my opinion, but I don't really want to spend a lot of time talking about the tactics.
Samuel's military tactics?
Yeah, I mostly think that's just sort of nonsense, because in a very real way, when Matt's not on the page, we just don't deal with it.
Yeah.
Rand almost never is, sitting down, I will deal with military tactics. He either delegates that, he always delegates that. I guess which is smart, he knows it's not his strong suit.
Yeah.
But it's not like we're, with Ruark.
Yeah, it's not like we're...
Who's actually dealing with whatever happens here.
Yeah, even when we're in, Bashir's point of view, it's usually him, in the middle of doing a military action. It's never really, the planning of it. Which is also, I think, a smart move on Robert Jordan's part. It's not actually that exciting.
No.
To watch people plan battles. It's fun to get a few scenes of Matt here and there to be look at this military boy. But,
yeah, but, imagine if we had to get a chapter where, Ruark is getting all the news of various places and had to be okay, well...
Yeah,
do your things in those flanking maneuvers. Whatever.
Phalanx. I know military stuff. I'm a genius.
So we start out in Galena's point of view. Galena kindly for us summarizes everything she's ever been and done, which is just so nice of her. She's like,
here's my resume.
It's a lot like that very bad fan fiction, you know? The girl who's like Ebony, Dementia Darkwing. I have black hair and da-da-da-da-da, and this is what I like and this is what I don't like. Galena is like, I'm 90 years old and I've held this position and this position and I'm really evil. Mm-hmm. And
I've tortured this person and this person.
Mostly I don't like it, but I do personally derive pleasure from, I had a really good time taking down Swan Sanche. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, here is the state of affairs. I'm miserable. And it's like, okay. Jesus.
A lot to take in all at once.
Yeah,
but
it's okay.
Okay.
Another woman who's miserable? Groundbreaking.
Wow. Truly, I was thinking about this. Robert Jordan's just kind of like, we're getting into the point of the series where I feel like most of the Aes Sedai are either like in captivity, fighting one another, bonded to Rand, like just like the various ways that he's made these really powerful women sort of caged in. You know?
Humiliated.
Yeah.
Yeah, Galena, we're gonna have to deal with Galena for the next few books, at least, since she is part of the Shadow sort of subplot, which is frustrating. We've already covered all the reasons why it's annoying to have to deal with yet another woman suffering, especially an evil or incompetent woman suffering, because Robert Jordan thinks it's kind of fun to humiliate or otherwise punish female characters for being bad.
Yeah.
That's just part of the thesis of this series, which really stinks, but that's what we have. Galena is, I guess, the single Aes Sedai prisoner taken at Dumais Wells, which is by the Ale, by the Shadow.
By the Shadow, yeah.
Which is kind of surprising. You would think maybe they'd get a couple, but that's who they have.
Yep.
Galena, we kind of already know this. She's in charge of the Red Aja in the White Tower. She's also pretty high up in the Black Aja. None of these things are actually relevant, except for making her a powerful person who has been brought low. Mm-hmm. But, like, we don't really deal with things Galena has put in motion, and in her absence, things happen differently or anything like that.
Yeah, it's not like Galena being gone is really changing.
Yeah, which is
how the White Tower will function.
Sort of another facet of her humiliation and indignity.
Yeah.
You know, she's like comforting herself with the thought that she is such an important person that surely no one will just allow her to be captured and tormented and whatever. She's like, well, Aleda won't let bad things happen to me, or Alviren won't, whatever. And it's like, first of all, they would. Neither of them gives a shit.
Yeah.
And second of all, they just don't know that you're alive, even. Why would they?
Yeah.
It's, silly. And so it's supposed to be sort of like an extended, we're supposed to be laughing at Galena.
Yeah, like, how dare you think you're so important?
Right. You're just, at the end of the day, you're just another woman who we get to step on.
Yeah, watch be stripped naked and beaten and humiliated. Yeah,
Galena, I think, was Galena the one who in the last book we made reference to her being a lesbian?
Yeah, I think Galena is the one who is, like, most explicitly in the series referenced as having relationships with other women.
Yeah, Galena is Robert Jordan's notion of a lesbian, which is that she is also hugely a misandrist.
Yeah, absolute man-hating lesbian.
And that she is predatory in her sexuality. I think that was what we specifically noted last book, was that she's
think so too.
A creep about thinking that women are attractive.
Yeah.
But yeah, she also does not like men, although hatred of men in this particular instance, sort of, the line is thin between that and being afraid of men.
Yeah.
She is very worried about them looking at her, seeing her naked and vulnerable in any way, which anyone would be, so it's a little bit...
I know, this scene is really funny. Like, you can very much, I think, tell it was written by a man.
Yeah.
Like, usually I try to, like, remove gender from the author when I'm reading, but it sometimes is literally impossible. Like, in this scene where Robert Jordan is like, Galena is so angry that men are seeing her naked. And I'm like, that's not what's happening, bestie.
Yeah.
Like, you saying? Like, I guess in Robert Jordan's mind, women are just so delighted when men see them naked that she would just be like, I'm so angry that I haven't got to choose. And it's like, no, it's literally my worst nightmare is being, like, in my underwear in a room full of men that I don't know. Like, that's a terrifying situation.
Yeah. And I'm sure we'll have more ample opportunities to talk about women being disrobed in front of men.
We'll get to the whole...
We'll relive this whole torturous scene with Fail and a bunch of other women.
Yeah, don't worry. If you love this scene,
get help. First of all, this is awakening something in you.
Perhaps
time to go to therapy, bestie.
Seek a therapist. But there's more to come.
Babe, go to therapy.
Babe, help. Babe.
So Galena has been under Tharava's control. She hates Tharava, obviously. Why wouldn't you? This is just a bunch of terrible women being terrible to each other.
This was like the worst sorority imaginable.
The sorority from hell. It's all of them, actually. I don't know. Galena's we are with Galena as her little branch of the Shadow reunites with the main body of them, which is headed up by Savannah. She's taken in front of the other Wise Ones, who Savannah's like, well, you guys have murdered Wise Ones. It's referencing this fake murder that I said I did.
The Wise Ones themselves did.
And Galena's like, you mean in battle? Where we all killed each other? Yeah. Like, it's an honest misunderstanding. I mean, that's dumb. It doesn't matter.
The whole thing is just, like, so constructed for Savannah to just be like, I'm doing whatever I want with you.
Yeah.
Because Galena's just like, what?
Yeah, she's like, hello? What are we even talking about?
Yeah.
But Savannah's sort of nefarious plan, as we are later told, is because she can't channel, she wants to have Galena totally under her control to do channeling for her.
Yeah.
Is sort of the idea. And of course she is also a person who would be excited by the idea of having someone who is or was very powerful so debased because of her. But Galena is made Datsang, whatever... I can't remember what that means, but it's basically like the ale form of you're not Gai Shane because there is dignity and purpose in being Gai Shane. If you are a Datsang, then you're just being punished.
Yeah, like her whole thing is she has to do like useless labor.
She has to do menial labor. And we're supposed to be sort of like, oh haha, the ale think it's humiliating because it is useless labor. And Galena is less worried about the humiliation of it, and it's just the physical labor of it is too much for her.
Yeah, she's basically being put in like a labor camp.
Yes.
Which, as we all know, is
deeply
horrendous.
Dehumanizing and very physically, there's a huge physical toll.
It's physically unsustainable.
Right. Except for apparently among the ale, where no one is ever sick or disabled or wounded or anything like that.
The ale have perfect bodies. Because they are just war machines, and therefore they cannot be sick or wounded or disabled or weak.
It's a really interesting way, actually, of, not interesting in a good way, interesting in a bad way, of also dehumanizing an entire group of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you're so superhuman.
Yeah, the ale are not ever vulnerable in that way, the way normal people are. It makes them easier to sort of categorize, view as an enemy force because we're never humanizing them.
Yeah, and I can't remember if I mentioned this in my blog or on the podcast, but I feel like it's very akin to the type of medical racism that says that black people do not feel pain.
Oh, yes.
That arose during slavery and the antebellum era in the American South, being like, this is why we can use them for such extensive labor, like they do not feel pain the way that white people do.
And which persists today in the medical system.
The doctors, like it's been proven by like studies that doctors don't think their black patients experience pain the same way their white patients do. Yep. So, just kind of an interesting little bit of racism creeping in there. Interesting in a bad way. We keep using the word interesting, but
interesting in, oh, here's something I hadn't spotted before, but here it is. It's
is.
also bad.
Everything's shitty.
So then Sam...
So then...
Sam, it's just like a comedy of errors. Savannah and the other wise ones are standing around, like, talking about their nefarious plans when Samuel teleports, like, 5 feet behind them. And it's like, yo. No, he's like, ho, 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 because he and Grendel are both carrying giant sacks. Like,
Merry Christmas!
And they're like, hello? What the fuck?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I'm ready to go. He also gives Savannah an oath rod.
Yeah.
And is like, oh, I acquired this yesterday. We're, catching up a little to the idea that those were Samael's people who were coming to the house where the Bowl of the Winds was at the same time. Samael's gholam, presumably, Samael's thugs, and they were able to make away with some things. So Samael probably didn't get as much stuff as he wanted, but he did get some stuff.
Yeah.
That's been kind of an ongoing, whenever we're catching up with the bad guys, that's been a subplot. So he hands Savannah an oath rod and is like, you could do terrible things with this. And she's just like, I am but a simple idiot. Because Robert Jordan is a racist. I'm an idiot who doesn't understand, quote-unquote, technology.
Yeah.
Actual magic. And so I will never utilize this to the full extent to which it could be utilized. And they, like, put Galena under an oath or something.
Yeah.
Later, but... truly, they could do really horrifying things with this. It only works on women who can channel, but, buddy.
That's still quite an important subset of people in these books.
Yeah. Samuel's like, okay, are you all ready? Because I've got these little magic cubes. Here's how they work. They'll just kind of stop working eventually. They have like a charge. You just set them up, and then you can't use them again for 3 days. And I'm just going to send you places like the plan was. And Savannah's like, great, yeah, let's do it. We bounce... oh, he says only men can use them. Because a woman who can channel will turn them off.
Yeah.
And frankly, Sangreal and Angreal and Terangreal are also fucking weird that these magic cubes don't sound that far-fetched.
No. Except
for the sheer amount of them. It is just simply unlikely that Samael would get a hold of a bunch of these all at once.
Yeah, like we have... I don't think we've really ever seen, like, 2 Terangreal that do, like, the exact same thing and look the exact same way.
Yeah, this is the second oath rod we know of, but we also kind of get a little bit more lore about the oath rod specifically and find out what is going on there.
Yeah.
For there to be multiple ones.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
But,
like, there's no way for Savannah to know enough about Terangreal, whatever, because the Ale are so disconnected from any type of magic. So that's why that makes them so easy for Samael to take advantage of in this situation.
Yeah, they're easy targets. And we, the readers, are kind of like, something's up here.
Yeah.
We don't quite know what's going on yet, but then we go over to some guy named Merrick as he and his clan, or whatever, are jumping through the gateway, quote-unquote, produced by the Terangreal, the box. He goes through with his wife, and a bunch of other people get in before it just stops working. The gateway snaps shut, killing a bunch of people in the process. Merrick and his wife are shocked because, like, they have kids, not young kids, adult children, on the other side of the gateway, and now they're separated from them.
Yeah.
But kind of before they can even process that all their scouts come back and are like, hey, there are armies literally surrounding us.
Yeah.
So we're about to be in the middle of a big battle. And Merrick sort of prepares for that and is obviously thinking he's going to go to his death. He tells his wife to get ready to become a Guy Shane, which is generally what happens to non-combatants who are taken prisoner amongst the Ale. And he gives the cube to a man who is a non-combatant blacksmith and is like, keep pressing the cube to try and get the gateway open again for the next 3 days. Which is sort of a tragic human little anecdote of a family separated.
Yeah.
It's more thoughtful than Robert Jordan usually is with his faceless hordes.
Yeah.
It is sort of a reminder that although the Shadow have been the bad guy entity, amongst the Shadow, there are families. There are people who are just doing what their leaders tell them to do.
Yeah.
Who are also being taken advantage of, and in this case, pretty much murdered by Samael en masse.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also gives, like, it's more humanizing to the victims of particularly the Forsaken than we ever really get. There's kind of like the Forsaken are out here doing torture and murder, and we're just supposed to kind of, like, take that as par for the course, and this is a really unique little moment to be like, yeah, there are really good people caught in the middle of all this who are dying and suffering, and it's really sad.
Yeah, R.I.P. to Merrick.
Yeah, he seemed like a real one.
We then bounce over to Grendel after all the Shadow are gone, and she turns to Samael and is basically like, what?
Why? Why would you... I can't believe you've done this.
I can't believe you've done this. I don't even think she says this outright, but their conversation, she's just like, why would you do this?
Yeah. She's like, I cannot see any benefit to this
and
at
he's
all.
like, oh, to distract Rand, but mostly he's like, for the chaos.
Yeah.
And we catch up with Shadar Haran, the sentient murderer. I mean, I'm sure they're all sentient, but Shadar Haran's the only one who's
the narrating murderer.
Yeah, the narrating murderer who's, of course, watching them, much in the same way that Moradin was watching them last time. And he basically is like, yeah, as long as Samael's doing this for chaos, to sow chaos, then the Dark One doesn't care, really, what happens. And I was thinking about that because sowing chaos, like... the creation of chaos is such a smart plot device for an author while being absolutely unsatisfying for the readers.
Yeah.
Like, Robert Jordan can do whatever the fuck he wants with his villains and be like, it's for the chaos. That's literally their mission statement, is they're supposed to create chaos.
Yeah.
He can set up the Shadow being on the other end of the world to kidnap Fail, because that's where he needs them to be.
Yeah.
Without having to do any of the actual legwork of giving them a conceivable reason to be there.
Yeah.
So that's great for Robert Jordan, but for us as readers, we're like, for chaos? Really?
Yeah.
There's zero payoff there.
Yeah, it's just, like, such a bizarre thing to do. Like, whenever I think about, like, the weirdest plot points in Wheel of Time, this feels like number one.
Yeah, the Shadow... Apparently a bunch of them get killed here. We keep saying this. A bunch of the Shadow apparently get killed. There are still 9 million of them just sort of milling about.
Yeah. It's just like this really, like, crunchy in a bad way plot point. It's, like, hard to digest.
Yeah, you're like, what?
What is going on?
Just why?
Yeah.
And Samuel's like, it's basically like he's just saying for the lulz.
Yeah, he's like, sometimes you just gotta spark some joy for yourself.
And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's a human reason to do something, but it's like me watching Naruto for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Not me separating, and it's not me just transplanting an entire group of people from one end of the continent to the other.
Yeah.
He won't even live to laugh about it. This bitch has, I think, less than 24 hours to live.
Somewhere in Kyrie, and Randolph Thor is rising from his coffin. Sniffing the air and saying, time to kill Samael.
Oh, hello? Samael just did something chaotic. Time to die.
Samael had a moment of joy.
Samael's joy sparks the murderous rage in Rand. By the way, Galena did tell us that it has been, or through Galena's narration, we are told that it has been 9 days since the battle of... It's been 9 days since Dumai's Wells, and I don't know how much time will pass between now and when Rand wakes up, but presumably not long.
So
this is the 10-day book.
How to lose a guy in 10 days. The guy is me.
The guy is Matt. He's lost now under a building.
It's true. R.I.P.
How to lose a guy in 10 days. We lost a lot of guys in 10 days.
You're right.
Now Sean.
How to lose Nalashon in 10 days.
We lost Olver. I don't really care about that.
Keep Olver.
But I do think it's pretty funny that the only reasonable reason Robert Jordan could think of for Matt to stay in
Avidar
was child endangerment.
No. It's like, kill the kid.
He was just like, the only thing Matt cares about is child welfare, I guess. Okay. Matt.
Oh, Matt. When will
Matt.
he rest?
Not for the next few books, I guess. So, we, did this out of order, but we pick up with Matt facing a large group of women back in the Terracin Palace. We're told it's been a few hours since, the events of the morning when they recovered the Bowl of the Winds. Matt tells us that he's still in his grimy-ass clothes. He's probably covered in blood and mud.
Yeah.
Looking disgusting, smelling disgusting. He's like, somehow they all got fucking freshened up.
They all bathed. What's happening?
He's like, I don't know if Elaine and Nynaeve are there, obviously. Also Tylan. Also all of the usual Aes Sedai. Many of the wise ones are there, except for a few who are guarding the Black Sister, or Ipson, as you noted.
These wise ones are from the kin, though. They use the
Sorry,
same...
excuse me.
No, it's confusing, because they call them wise women.
Oh, yeah.
Like, Ebu Dar calls them the wise women.
Robert Jordan, stop talking about wise.
So it's
stuff.
like, it's
Wisdom,
very
wise ones.
confusing. I would be reading these chapters, and I'm like, why is there a wise
The
one?
kin.
Oh my god.
The kin. That's what I'm talking about.
The kin. And also a bunch of sea folk women.
A contingent of sea folk women, which Matt tells us that grouping is a little bit confusing because he knows a fair amount about the sea folk thanks to his old memories.
Yeah.
And he's like, this is sort of a weird group of women. There's like, some deckhands here who don't have
not
authority.
usually part of the negotiation team. So Matt's in a room with like 35 women, it feels like.
And he is in the middle of saying, we have to leave because what we just saw was a killing machine specifically designed to kill channelers.
Yeah.
Channeling women, in this case. And everyone's like, well, but we've never heard of gholam.
Therefore, you're lying.
Matt's like, well, let me give you a little history lesson then. Verbatim that he got from Birgitte 10 minutes ago. And they're like, where'd you hear this? And he says something about, like, he will not give up Birgitte as a source of information. It's very sweet. He's
journalistic integrity.
He's like, I read it in a book. And everyone's like, what the fuck?
Everyone's like, liar! You
never
can't
read
read.
a book. He's like, but he tells us that 6 gholam were created, 3 men-shaped, 3 women-shaped, more or less. Some fun facts about the gholam. You can't touch them, do anything to them with the power. They are sort of human versions of Matt's Foxhead medallion in that way. They're supernaturally strong. And they have no bones!
They have no bones!
They have no bones, Matt tells us. I don't know how that can literally be true.
Yeah, they're just these, like, plasma-type blobs.
Yeah, how
but
do they...
somehow they're walking upright on 2 legs.
Is it just sheer willpower that keeps them upright? They don't
It's
obey
all
the laws
the blood
of
they
physics.
consume.
You're right.
But they have no bones.
No bones. No bones about it.
No bones about this gholam. And everyone is like, Matt, you're obviously a lying piece of shit. Why would we listen to you when you're trying to save our lives?
And Matt,
so, the usual fare.
Yeah. Matt the whole time is like, there's something very weird about this situation. Why am I the one arguing?
Yeah.
Why is this happening? Elaine and Nynaeve haven't said shit.
Yeah, they're
which
just
is weird because
not
usually they
talking.
can't shut up.
Yep, that's true.
The Aes Sedai are being kind of weird. The kin aren't saying anything at all, which isn't too weird because they're usually pretty like subservient in the presence of Aes Sedai, but also they have in the last few hours gained a lot of respect for me. And so it is weird that they would sort of leave me hanging in this way.
Yeah.
And also I'm the only man in the room. Like, why am I still here?
Where's Tom and Julian?
Why am I representing the only, like, logical, rational choice?
Well, Brigitte and Aviend are also here.
Brigitte and Aviend are just sort of, like, hanging on in the background.
I just need to add to the sheer number of people in the room.
Yeah, this is a packed room. And Matt is just like, yeah, here's the gholam. They're very scary. Can we leave now?
Yeah.
He's basically like, I don't know what this guy was doing there, except maybe he wants maybe he's been sent by someone who also wants the Bowl of the Winds.
Yeah.
Which is a fair guess, you know? They have no way of knowing that the Forsaken have been hunting down this random cache of Angreal, Terangreal. As far as we know, Samael doesn't give a shit about the Bowl of the Winds specifically.
Yeah.
But, Matt is like, for all I know, they want the same MacGuffin that we want.
Yeah, no, they're all very logical guesses. They're very educated guesses about what could be happening. Basically all pointing to, it's just safer if we leave Ebudar.
Yeah. And this isn't emphasized enough, but this would be a hard sell for the sea folk.
Yeah.
The sea folk are not people who typically just, travel on land.
Yeah.
They spend their entire lives on ships.
Yeah.
But we don't really talk about that because Matt is so, caught up in the weirdness of the situation, and also Robert Jordan just doesn't sort of tell us, here's a couple of real reasons why these people might be resistant to this.
Yeah.
It's not like Matt is like, okay, well, I see why the sea folk might not want to do this.
Yeah.
Or we're not really getting their actual arguments, we're just sort of getting nonsense arguments.
Yeah.
So that's a little frustrating. But eventually Matt sort of, enough of his little logical brain workings come together, and he makes a couple of accurate guesses, and also his temper snaps.
Yeah, Matt loses it. Which, I mean, one of his best friends was murdered this morning because Nine and Elaine. Sorry, my brain was like, they don't have names. And Nine and Elaine are stupid. He's covered in blood. Probably Nalashon's blood.
His abuser is in the room.
His abuser's in the room.
He is fighting for his right to leave his abuser alongside everyone else's safety.
Yeah.
No, as a caricature in this situation, Matt is perfectly justified.
Yeah.
It's a little frustrating because he is being used as yet another mechanism for Robert Jordan to have men be bullies.
Yeah.
Or otherwise humiliating to women.
Yeah.
What is also nice about this is that we get to see someone weaponize their Taviranness.
Yeah.
Which we had Rand doing a bit earlier in this book, and Matt is, I think, the one who most consciously does it.
Yeah.
With his luck powers, because, that's such a visible thing that happens. But, probably the one thing I would actually change about this scene is just have Nynaeve and Elaine tell him, we want you to spearhead this because you're Taviran. We're hoping it'll...
there's no reason for them not to tell him except for them to be manipulative, shitty pieces of shit.
And they're, embarrassed about making a bad bargain with the sea folk. Yeah. But, whatever. The idea also is that the sea folk don't really have any justifiable reasons. They're just drawing this out because they want to extract more from the bargain that they made with the Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
So yet another group of women being bad. Naughty. Just naughty women everywhere. Shut up, Robert.
Yeah. Can it? I've had enough of this dude.
I've had enough of this guy.
It's Robert Jordan.
So Matt, I'm gonna get that meme and cut it out. Just put it right there. His little face.
Had enough of this guy.
Had enough of this dude. So Matt finally turns to the sea folk and is like, okay, target locked.
Yeah.
Advances and is like, okay, you're all here because you're women who can channel. That doesn't mean shit to me. I've got my magic necklace. You don't scare me.
Yeah.
And he just has this really funny exchange where, a woman, Renail, I think is her name, is like, you can't boss me around. And how dare you speak to me that way? He gets up with a knife and he just grabs it. He's like, sit back down.
Yeah. He's throwing a bunch of insults, sea folk specific insults.
Sea folk specific insults. Yeah. Everyone else in the room must be like, what the? Brigitte probably in the background like, woo!
Go bestie, go!
Those archaic insults. We love to hear it.
It's a very funny scene.
If I were Brigitte, I'd be reconsidering my stance about ugly men, because...
Yeah, I'd be like, that man is sexy.
Yeah.
And just, ugly enough.
Yeah, just
which we all know makes men hotter, actually, when they're just a little ugly.
Yeah, perfect-looking men are upsetting.
Who wants that?
Yeah.
I need to be just a little bit.
What do I need with a Ken doll? Come on. I want some personality in the face region.
Exactly.
So finally, Matt is like, here's our... I don't care what bargains you've made in the past. Our bargain is that you're going to do what I say, and in exchange, I won't kick you.
Yeah, I won't kick your ass.
And she's like, fine. And he's like, great. Seals the bargain. And then she's like, all right, well, it appears I've just made a bargain with Taviran. Which is like, a word that gets thrown around a lot more than you would expect based on how seemingly nouveau it is in the first couple
I know,
books.
everyone seems to know immediately that they're Taviran and what that means.
Or whatever.
But yeah, Matt just has some, like, real bangers when he's like, you can consider me the master of blades and my blades are bare.
And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? What? He doesn't know. He's like, I just heard it somewhere.
But everyone else is like, oh. The sea folk are all like, oh my god.
Yeah, I wish in Matt's point of view we'd had more, like, reaction shots from the other sea folk.
One woman faints. Like in this scene where Egg gets war powers from the tower and a woman just faints straight away. Vomits. Yeah.
So good. So Matt doesn't even manipulate, gets this out of them, and the whole group disperses to get ready to go. Matt gets assaulted by Tylan one last time.
We wish it was one last time.
Yeah, what he believes is one last time, and then he's like, fuck, I'm getting out of here. Kind of out in the hallway, he meets up with Tom and Julian, who are like, we can't find... Or no, they don't tell him that they can't find Olver.
Yeah, they go to get Olver. And Olver's shitty babysitter is like, why would I have your kid?
Yeah, Olver's just the shitty babysitter who's like, who? He did his reading and now he's gone. I don't know, he's running with the street urchins.
Yeah, I set him loose with a bunch of feral children.
The Artful Dodger came and picked him up from daycare.
It's good for him to run with the street urchins.
And Matt's like, what?
The Artful Dodger came and picked him up for daycare.
It's just what's happening.
His daycare is run by an 8-year-old.
Yeah, Matt's like, okay. Runs and tells Nynaeve and Elaine, okay, look, I can't leave because Olver's just... This actually doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Olver is, missing and says he'll be back by sundown. Matt and his people, went out to the Rayhad in the morning, were there for a couple hours at least, traveling included.
Yeah.
Came back and it's been another few hours. So at the earliest, it is noon. Could be a little past noon. So I know the Shanshan invasion is about to happen. But if I were a reasonable person who didn't know the Shanshan invasion was about to happen, I frankly would risk the 6 hours where the gholam might hunt me down.
Yeah,
in the well-guarded palace.
Stay there, yeah.
To just be like, okay, well, we gotta wait for one more person. Or just be like, okay, open a gateway, get started. It's gonna take a while.
You guys go, but I'll wait here for Olver.
Yeah,
and then you can open a gateway back and come fucking get me.
There's no... Instead, what they decide on is, first everyone's like, oh, well, let's just all go out and search. Which I feel like Robert Jordan threw in there to be like, oh, look, they're not awful people.
At least, yeah.
Well, they are. But everyone's like, okay, well, we can't just, like, ditch Olver. Which they do ditch Matt later, and they do ditch Olver later to the Shanshan invasion.
Yeah, they were like, well, sometimes you lose a child to the Shanshan invasion.
Not to mention the millions of actual other children in the city.
Yeah, also, all the other people living in Ebudar. The Artful Dodger himself.
The Artful Dodger got taken by the Shanshan.
The Artful Dodger is organizing the resistance. Viva la resistance.
Viva la resistance. Oh, that's the story I want in Path of Daggers.
Yeah. This 8-year-old.
For some reason, what they settle on is Matt, Tom, Julian, and the rest of his guys who are under his command are going to go out looking for Olver in the city, try and get him pretty quickly. But Elena and Nynaeve and everyone else are not going to wait. They're just going to go.
Yeah.
Their plan, by the way, is to go to the Kin's farm out in the suburbs.
Yeah.
And Matt is basically just like, I'll catch up.
Yep.
I guess on foot. They're like, Tylan has directions to the farm, so you can come back and get them from her.
Why don't they just give Matt the fucking directions?
I don't know. I wish they just had, like, Google printout.
MapQuest.
Yeah, MapQuested, bitch. Whatever. Matt is like, okay, great. before he leaves, he sort of hands over his responsibilities to take care of Elaine and Nynaeve to Birchie and Lan.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, keep them safe. And they're like, Avi, and just like, we will. He wasn't even looking at her, and he's just like, okay.
Yeah.
He then leaves after Nynaeve is like, remember, a storm is coming. And he's like, okay,
Thanks, Mom.
Whatever that means. We get a very weird line here where he says, oh, it'll rain again once they use the Bowl of the Winds. It seems years since rain last fell. Something tugged at his thoughts, something about the weather and Elaine, which made no sense, but he shrugged it off. I looked it up on Wiki, could find no explanation for that. I figured maybe it was supposed to be something to do with the holes in his memories, but can't figure it out. So if anyone of you knows, I'm throwing it out there.
What a weird thing to say.
I know. I was just like, what? Is that a callback to something that happened in this book? Because I couldn't figure it out.
I don't know.
But he goes and gets his men, gives them instructions. He has a little epiphany. He sort of ends this book on a high note where he's like, you know what? Maybe being Taviran isn't that bad. Because, you know, I don't know.
It is a real, like, as much as I hate that he stays in Ebudar, period, especially for Olver, who feels like a really frustrating plot device just sort of foisted upon Matt. I've talked about that at length, though. There's this very cute little scene where he's like, look at all these men gathered here who are, like...
Who are very different.
Very different. Here's Tom, who's been, like, basically the king of Andor. And then here's Vannon, who was a horse thief. And just, like,
but
all
he and
these
Julian
men.
both have so much, like, pride. And yet they're taking orders from me, a 22-year-old, you know? And he's basically... It's just sort of a moment of introspection that is surprising for Matt, first of all, as a character. But also just surprising generally. Because it's the sort of thing we get tinged with humiliation from Perrin, you know? He's just, like, so ashamed to be in charge. And Rand, at this point, kind of just thinks it's nonsensical. He's just like, whatever, I don't understand it, and I have to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
But Matt, this is the only moment of actual, like, adult growth, it seems like.
Yeah.
In a mature way. Where Matt is just like, wow, they're taking instructions from me, and he's not just like, I'm the worst person possible to be giving instructions. Matt has a lot of confidence. He knows that he's a smart guy. He knows that he's not giving bad instructions.
Yeah.
And mostly he's just like, this is really neat.
Yeah, no, it's really fun in this moment to have a character that, like, takes pride in being responsible for other people.
Yeah, he's like, I don't like being responsible for people. It is not something that I enjoy.
Yeah.
But I am able to do it. And, you know, if I'm able to competently lead people and it gets the job done, then great.
Yeah, and it's just, like, so sweet because he's got just, like, such a good attitude, and he's just proved over and over again to all these men in front of him that he knows what he's doing, that they're all just like, I'll do anything for you, Matt Cathon.
Yeah.
It's just it's just a very good leadership moment in a book full of in a series full of bad leadership moments, which we've also talked about at length.
Yeah, he's a sweetie.
He's a cutie, but then he goes into Ebudar talking to people selling sweets and hot women because apparently the only personality traits a male child is allowed to have is candy and titties.
Candy and horny. He's 10. What the fuck?
Yeah. Which is, like, it's obviously fine to have a growing sexuality, but also, like, maybe don't make this 10-year-old into some sort of, like, lecher. What's happening?
Yeah. I don't want to cast aspersions. Whatever.
But
throughout we're getting little hints of the Shanshan coming.
Yeah, Matt keeps hearing weird things from people about, there was a battle over here, and something was happening over there, and there was a riot, and things are blowing up, or what sounds like thunder, but is cannons, we can assume.
Matt is just, like, sort of dismissing everything at first. And it is a really good scene.
It is a really good scene.
Because we, the readers, are so clued in already to what's happening. And I was kind of thinking about how last time, a few weeks ago, we talked about how we wished we didn't have to deal with the White Cloak invasion of Amadicia through anyone's... We wish we'd just gone straight from Pedronile getting rumors of the Shanshan in Terabon to this, right? We basically said that. So I was, like, trying to figure out, okay, would that still work? And I think it would. It is just so, like... Or even if, you know, he was able to sprinkle in more rumors about the Shanshin going further.
Yeah.
But you can tell as a reader something's actually happening.
Yeah.
Something is going on. So you just get this, like, perfect moment of tension as Matt walks out on the docks to look out. It's so good. He hears these loud explosive noises. And he looks out at the docks, and everyone on the ships has stopped and is looking toward the noise. And I think this might be so good because we are a nation that has dealt with... Not a nation, excuse me. We are a world that has dealt with this sort of emergency. We sort of have a shorthand for this type of thing. It's not necessarily armies invading, but we know what happens. We know what happens when things get attacked. Buildings fall.
Yeah.
Or when there is violence somewhere close by.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily involve us immediately, but we are able to see it, even if it's on our phones.
Yeah.
So we have this great moment of Matt walking out to the end of the docks and looking out and seeing these ships in some sort of battle, and, like, that moment of recognition with the ships. Yeah. He's like, what the fuck? The Shanshin?
The Shanshin?
Everyone's like, what the fuck are you talking about? It's the Aes Sedai. The Aes Sedai are coming for us. And Matt just is like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And kind of starts frantically now looking for Olver.
Yeah.
Running around. And eventually he, like, runs and kind of comes to this street where the Shanshin are just, like, marching past. So there's, like, a land invasion to match the naval invasion on their, like, weird animals. He sees their sort of scouts flying up above. And he actually sees, at one point he's in an alley, and he sees a Soldan blow something up, and he sees the building across from him, like, the facade crumble.
Yeah.
Which is also great because it gives us another shorthand of what's about to happen to Matt.
Yeah.
As he tells us specifically that he is staying close to buildings to be in the shadows. And then, you know, Robert Jordan is always great at writing explosions. I don't know why, it's a gift of his.
Yeah, does have some talents.
But Matt is running, has not found Olver, and is in an explosion and looks up and a building is falling on his head and the dice stop.
Yeah, which is like, if you're reading the series for the first time.
Like, Matt just died.
And then Matt doesn't appear in Path of Daggers, you're like, they killed Matt.
What the fuck?
They didn't. Thank God. Otherwise, I truly would have stopped reading.
He got pretty banged up, though.
He breaks his leg. And it's really sad in Winter's heart because he's still recovering and everyone is like, could you speed up, basically?
Yeah. Yeah.
Walks with a
walking stick.
I almost called it a crutch, but it isn't exactly a crutch. It's just a staff. Like a big cane.
Okay, that was a long-winded discussion of those two chapters.
Well, you can just lop off the first 15 minutes of us talking nonsense and throw that in the internet garbage can.
We'll pick up next week with the end of Crown of Swords. But hey, thanks for listening. Thanks to Glenna Mackenzie for our theme song.
Absolutely. To
our patrons on Patreon. And our followers on social media. We referenced this last week, but here it is again. If you're looking for a podcast that will talk about the Wheel of Time show, which is currently being released as we're recording this, then go check out Nevermind the Trollocs. Mm-hmm. You can find them probably by looking through our Twitter, if nothing else.
Yep.
But you can just also search that on any social media of your choice and locate them.
Yep.
That's it from me. Do you have anything?
Yeah, this is a circle back to a couple weeks ago when I said we were going to be doing a special promotion on our Patreon where if you joined up any level, I would send you a sticker. That is still happening. Like, I haven't set up the official promotion. First, because I wanted to make sure everyone who is currently a patron was able to get stickers if they wanted to, and we have, put out the call and sent stickers to all the patrons. I mean, there are a few that still need stickers, but that need to be sent, but I have them reserved, don't worry. We still do have some stickers, and I'll put this all over social media too, so you have the details. So if you join, within the next little while, if you want to join our Patreon, we have, like, so much bonus content for, like, really cheap. Like, we're probably the cheapest Patreon you'll ever find. Mm-hmm. So if you want to spare a couple dollars and get our extra bonus podcast, our blogs, the blooper reel, all that good stuff, you can also get one sticker at the $1 level or all 3 stickers at the $3 level and above. So pretty good deal.
Check that out.
Patreon.com/everybodyhatesrand.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Don't have time for a sign off.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeehaw.